during that time, received an award from Faces and Voices for being the Recovery Advocate of the Year. So yeah, you want to talk about shame, guilt, and really having a hard time forgiving yourself. That was one of the worst secrets I ever had.
Welcome to the Secret Life Podcast. Tell me your secret. I'll tell you mine. When I first started my recovery 11 years ago, I struggled through the textbook-like material on this subject. I wanted to make the addiction and the recovery from it accessible and relatable to more people by telling it in an entertaining way. Well, I'm super excited to announce I've released my first book, Secret Life of a Hollywood Sex and Love Addict. If I can help just one person find a solution or at least realize they're not broken or alone, then writing this has been worth it. You can pick up the book exclusively at Amazon or signed copy at secretlifenovel.com. And the best way to support our podcast is to subscribe and share. If you haven't left a review or rating on Apple Podcasts yet, please do. It'll help more people find our show. And if you want to be a guest, shoot me a note at secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to Secret Life Podcast. I'm Breanne Davis-Gant. Today I'm pulling back the curtains of all kinds of human secrets. We'll hear about what people are hiding from themselves or others. You know, those deep, dark secrets you probably want to take to your grave, or those lighter, funnier secrets that are just plain embarrassing. Really, the how, what, when, where, and why of it all. Today, my guest is Jason. Now, Jason, I have a question for you.
Yes.
Dun, dun, dun. What is your secret?
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Oh, God.
Wow. God, what is my secret now or in the past? I'll probably
all of them. All of them.
All of them. And I'll go with the secret that really tore me down and that ripped me up, which was being, I originally got sober July 23rd, 2010, and had multiple years of sobriety, and relapsed after, I want to say it was in 4 years of sobriety going into my 5th year, and relapsed and hid that from everybody for a long time.
How long did you hide it?
I want to say, God, for about a year, until it was not possible to hide anymore. But the worst part about that is I actually, during that time, received an award for, out in Washington, D.C. from Faces and Voices for being the Recovery Advocate of the Year. So,
oh, that's brutal.
Yeah, you want to talk about shame, guilt, and really having a hard time forgiving yourself. That was one of the worst secrets I ever had, because it ended up coming to haunt me in so many different ways in my life. And it was not pretty. And it took me to some serious depths of addiction again. I mean, it drove me down this course of on and off relapsing for years, for I'd say 3.5 years. Not being able to get into a place of true serenity and surrendering and being willing and open to take direction. And because I just went down a deep, dark path that I didn't know that I could even get out anymore.
It's so interesting because you are talking about a chemical addiction with alcohol, correct? Is it just alcohol or? Alcohol,
cocaine, Adderall, anything that gets you going.
But here's the thing, of being a sex and love addict, I never slipped. Like, I didn't have a slip because I saw people around me that slipped, and the depth you go to with the shame and the stigma and the secrets, I was terrified that if I slipped, that I would never come back, because it's really hard to come back once you have that, right? Like
it was, I'll never forget, sitting in treatment again, down the road. I was sitting there and I literally I was thinking of shame, and I had come up with the acronym in treatment: self-hatred against my existence. That's what what shame meant to me. And not to mention, I ended up going into detox, and later that next day, my wife was pregnant and her water broke. So I went from the detox floor up to the 4th floor in Hogue to watch my daughter be delivered. And I mean, that's how deep it got. And that wasn't even, you'd think that would be enough
to get you out of it, but it's not.
No. And I did not stay long enough. I did not actively arrest the disease. I did not get stabilized. Went home 3-4 days, after, and was back using again. And then 6 months had gone by, and then I ended up having to go back to detox and back into treatment. And by the grace of God, that was my last treatment stint. But
can
it
I
is
ask you a question though? Can
Please.
we go back to that first time after almost 5 years of sobriety? What was that moment where you decided to do it again? Did something come up? Did something happen? Or was it just a boring day where you just found yourself acting out?
I love that you asked this, because I think it's a really important thing.
Yeah.
So what had happened is life got really good.
Yeah, right. Too good.
It really did. Life got really, really good. The promises were coming to fruition for me. And, I was super, super busy. And I actually went and saw my psychiatrist, who's seen me and known me for years. And obviously not well enough after I tell you this, but we were talking, and he's basically just like, you have a lot going on. It seems like you're taking on too much. You got a lot of anxiety, you got ADD.
Yeah. Me too.
Right. And again, with no intention of trying to abuse anything or get high or anything like that, he ended up prescribing me Adderall. And, within a couple months, I ended up getting prescription dyslexia. Instead of taking one every 4 hours, I was taking 4 every 1 hour. And it basically dominoed effect. And that Adderall addiction ended up going into me taking, 300 milligrams a day, which is basically, again, for people that don't know, I mean, it's pharmaceutical synthetic grade meth.
And here's the thing, Adderall is used so much right now. It's out of control. Like, people are using it all the time.
People are. And I mean, and that's the thing too, is after abusing that, I mean, after 6-7 months, I mean, not only did I lose a ton of weight, I looked horrible. I was I was sleep deprived. I was like in a psychosis.
Were you working at the same time with all that going on?
Yeah, I was working with all that. And, I was working probably more. I don't know how effective I was being, but with all that was happening, I ended up turning back to alcohol too, because I couldn't sleep anymore. And so that's where this whole cycle just started to domino, as this Adderall, addiction turned into me starting to drink again. Nobody knowing on the outside. This, my wife knew at home. She was an untreated codependent, and not how to deal with the issues, the circumstances, because she met me sober and we got married sober. And, all she knew me was as.
Right.
Yeah.
Because my husband and he was sober when we got together, but then he entered another program. So I've seen him, act out in another addiction. So your wife had the same thing where she had to go through this. It's like meeting a new person.
Yes, it is. And again, when we're in active addiction, especially with substance abuse, in that area, I mean, we're mass manipulators, we lie, cheat, steal to get what we want. And, I basically had her like a puppet around my finger until it got to a point, obviously, where that all fell apart, and she ended up, basically having a mini intervention on me. But it was a very vicious cycle, very vicious cycle.
And that went on for a couple years before you hit that intervention. How was that intervention? If you want to add, you don't have to talk about it.
Of course. No, it was the most freeing experience in the world. For so long, I had so much fear about what would happen if people had known I'd relapsed, because there was so much trauma and so much harm that I had done in my using days that I just did not want to, hurt the people around me and all the people that supported me and all those things. And, but most importantly, for myself, it was just like, I couldn't believe I'd gotten back to where I was, but I had just had all that fear up until that moment was completely lifted. It just felt like that elephant finally got his foot off my chest. And like the cat was out of the bag, and it was just like, I was able to breathe. And it was a very freeing experience. I was so grateful. I mean, cause I didn't know how much longer I was going to last. I mean, in my addiction, when I use, it's not just, drinking and using. It takes me to the depths of, not contemplating, but, wanting to attempt suicide and stuff because
well, I always think it's like you are trying to commit suicide in any.
It's a slow way. 100%.
Right. 100%. Like, cause there's this sickness where we hate ourselves so much that we want to destroy ourselves subconsciously or consciously.
No, it is. And it's not wanting to be, you're not wanting to be present in that moment, and it's, why are you wanting to escape? And you're really just in a miserable state of existence. And that's why I think it's like when people struggle with addiction, it's not to justify their behaviors, when people have these negative connotations associated with them, but it's just to try to understand that like, hey, look, there's no such thing as recreational use of heroin. There's no such thing as recreational use of, of meth or, drinking a bottle of vodka a day. It's like, imagine what that person's having to go through every day just to try to get through what they're getting, going through.
Yeah. It's not a choice. It's not like we're like, hey, I want to use something today to feel better or feel okay or to feel good in this reality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I can't wait to destroy my life today. What can I do? Like,
or destroy somebody else. Yay.
And that's the misconception behind a lot of this. And that's why, I mean, it's such a multifaceted disease, and when you're dealing with it, and it's like you said, kind of just in parallel with this dominoed, with the other secret was, having a gambling addiction, having like, getting into a porn addiction, and all those different things that dominoed from all of this, which again is looking back at even the relapse. And I think was the triggering events, not that it was a planned relapse, and again, is take it however you want, but that also opened up, so many other it dealt with so many other, let me do that again. It opened up, I don't know, Pandora's box, if you will, to all these other things that I guess were untreated.
Yeah.
Right?
It's all underneath it. It's always, there's more underneath that chemical addiction. Usually there's other ways we've always acted out that we never looked at.
Correct. And I think that for me too, is like, being able to look back now and having all those things, the gambling, the porn, all those things be, revealed. Mm-hmm. It was like, that was another thing that I'm like grateful all that happened when it did. Obviously it was a miserable experience, but it was like, it allotted me the opportunity to focus and work on those areas, which were really underlying triggers that I had that I'd never really, accepted.
Yeah. It's all that stuff that we like walk around in the world that we're doing that we have no idea we're doing. And then when it comes to light is like, oh, there's a way out of this darkness that I've created for myself.
Exactly.
It's brutal. I mean, it's brutal. So how long now have you been sober from the chemical addiction or the gambling or the porn?
So my new sobriety date is December 17th, 2019. Mm-hmm. So what's a year and a half now?
Yeah.
Woo-hoo. So it's been going good. I mean, this time around, there's something different,
What do you think it is that's different?
I think there's a few things. I mean, it's the honesty, the humility, the relationships that I have around me, mm-hmm. I think is a big proponent that you're a product of your environment. And I think the people I've surrounded myself with are a big contributing factor to that. Mm-hmm. God's a big part of my life. Family is a big part of my life, but I have consistency and I have structure, and structure creates safety. Yeah. I have a routine. I have, I put my program as my number one priority. God and my program are what comes first, and everything falls into place after that, with family, friends, and work and all those other areas.
And I love when I say that to people too. I'm like, my program comes first. My husband says the same thing. And people are like, wait, no, your husband or your child is supposed to be first. And you're like, no, because if I don't put this first and myself first in that way, then I will fuck up everything else.
Well, everything will be gone. And yeah. I've already experienced that. I mean, I was literally hanging on by a thread, at this last go around. I mean, it was at that point where I was literally almost lost everything, house, wife, kids. I mean, it got to that point where it was so bad. One thing that I always heard was service, you know what I mean? And I always love being of service, but I think for me, like that's one of the biggest things for me today is really giving back. There's nothing more gratifying than giving back and not looking for anything in return. Yeah. So I live by like a mantra every day is, do something nice for somebody and don't get caught.
Yeah. And that's the thing. That's what the old timers talk about. There was this whole, AA, we're 12 steppers, but not everybody's listening, but there's this thing where people were saying that addicts then become addicted to service. And it was like the old timers like, no, we're not. We don't become addicted to service. We're grateful for the serenity and peace we're feeling. And we want to pay it forward. We want to help another addict feel that way. And that gives us a sense of gratitude and peace, like pain.
Well, more than that, it gives you a sense of purpose, and motivation. And I think that's like to just, kind of close off what you were asking with that question is I get to wake up every day and I have a purpose. I'm motivated, and I have something I get to look forward to every single day with my work, with my family, with the activities, the hobbies, and the things that I've created in my life. I've created a life that's worth living today.
Yeah. And it's not all about ego but sometimes here's the tricky thing, especially when you get sober longer and longer, you can then somehow transfer your service like you're doing it. I had that moment at, I think 8 or 9 years when I was like sponsoring and speaking all over. And I was like, I'm doing this. And it's like, God's like, no, this is not you. Like, this has nothing to do with you. This is, I'm just using you to help other people. You can take yourself out of it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. That's the beauty of it.
Because sometimes if like somebody does well, I'm like, yay, look what I did. I helped them do well. And it's like, no, lady,
no,
stop. This is not about you.
Correct. No. And I think that's one of the greatest joys too, is when you are of service, especially for people that struggle and, whether it's sex addiction, whether it's, alcohol, gambling, drugs, whatever it may be, though, is when you do give back and you're a part of that process, even though they're doing the work and they're putting one foot in front of the other to see their lives transform. I mean, that's one of the most gratifying things is to see where they were when they came in and to see where they are, a month.
Isn't that like, it's like the best thing in the entire world? Like, honestly, it is the best feeling, better than being on a TV show, which you have been, I have been, money in the bank, a house, a wife, a kid, whatever. It literally is the best feeling in the whole world for me too.
It is. And the best part about that too, is it keeps giving back too, especially when those people, maintain the course is like, around holidays, Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. People will send a text just of gratitude. Hey, thank you so much for allowing our family to be together again. It's another year, and that's all the way back from 2010. There's people that still reach out that have sustained and maintained and have a flourishing life. And it's cool to know that you help that, you help that person get to where they're going.
And that ripple effect, they start helping other people. And then
Correct.
It ripples and it helps families heal and it stops generational addiction, which ran in my family. That's the other question I want to ask you. Does addiction run in your family?
Hell yes. Yes.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, look, I would say half my family struggles with some form of substance abuse or mental health. And, after like getting, more educated and knowledgeable on this is 20% of all people that struggle with addiction are pregenetically disposed to it. And the other 80% is more environmental and situational and stuff. But I definitely, the addiction gene runs deep in my family. That's for sure. Too.
But here's the thing. I don't know anybody close to me that has a chemical addiction in my family. But when I went back generationally, my great grandfather was an alcoholic. And then every generation handled it differently and became addicts, like overeaters, codependents, workaholics. It was crazy when I went and looked back because I had no idea. Because the chemical addiction is easy to spot because you're
Correct.
like, oh, they're shooting heroin in the corner or they're drinking a bottle of whiskey. Like I see that. But the other ones can be so hard to detect, especially the codependency and the sex and love addiction. Those are really hard to spot.
They are. And I think people, and with that is me and my wife, we've
Mhm.
talked about this for so long now, is because wherever there's an alcoholic or an addict, there's a codependent, and sometimes they're just as sick, if not sicker. And I think when we address that is come to find out, not only is my wife a codependent and an enabler, is I'm a codependent, you know what I mean? So we had, not only am I dealing with the addiction side, I have the codependency side, and so does she. I mean, we were dealing with a perfect storm. But it's those variations without the education and the knowledge can be very detrimental.
So let me ask you, we are running out of time. We literally could talk forever because like you are one of my types of favorite people to talk to, the people that like been through the darkness and are on the other side. Like I just love.
You're my type of girl, man. This is where it's at. We'll have to do it again for sure.
But I want to ask, if someone out there is struggling, wanting to go back to those, about to slip, their life is great, what would be your advice for them right now? Like if someone is listening, about to just slip, for not because of darkness, because their life is so amazing.
Yeah, no, I think honestly, it goes back to it's picking up the phone. For me is reaching out to somebody, being able to be completely open and honest, is the number one thing that I would do. Is you got to be able to tell on yourself.
Yeah. Tell those secrets, right?
Yeah, it's that would be, if the one person is struggling, it would be to pick up the phone and keep calling until somebody picks up.
Okay. So here's the last question for you.
Yes.
Your life is fucking great right now.
Yes.
The Hills are back. It's a hit show. You just had your second baby. You and your wife are doing great. You're in recovery. You're being of service. You're about to get 2 years soon. How do you not slip this time?
Well, number one is to take it one day at a time. That is really kind of my mantra now, is to really be in the moment, be present, and live every day for what it's worth. That's number one. What I do.
No future tripping.
no future tripping. But I also, something that I do is, again, going back to, I told you I have, consistency with structure. And in the morning, I have those routines. I wake up, I do my morning meditation. I do my prayer. I do a gratitude list. Not only, I do a gratitude list of 3 things I'm grateful for, but not only what I'm grateful for, but why. I send that out to 10 other guys. We have that go around. I've been doing that for the last couple of years. And then I either go to a meeting or I do exercise, is a big proponent of it. But the biggest thing that's been the most helpful for me is not only waking up and having, that process in the morning, but it's at nighttime, is really doing a daily reprieve and looking at the areas where I fell short, finding out where I need to make amends, and, looking at the areas that I can improve upon, for the next day. And then I set myself up, with a priority list of the 3 things that I want to accomplish, when I wake up the next day.
Oh, I love that. Those are doable things that everybody can do, even if you're not an addict. The gratitude list, the prayer, the meditation, the self-care, then looking at your day and saying, oh, where did I go wrong? And where can I go right tomorrow?
Yeah. And because that's really what it comes down to. I mean, for me is like, when I'm able to look back and like, even if it's just like, God, I overbooked myself, you know what I mean? It's something that you would just be like, oh, don't do that again. But like, if I actually write it down and I can identify like, hey, I can't take that many meetings. Like I overwhelmed myself. I created a bunch of anxiety. I've then gotten an argument with my wife because I was frustrated. Like you don't realize those little things can really domino. And the more that I can bring awareness to it, the more I can accept it. And then I'm able to actually have an action plan to go with it.
Because it's HALT, right? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Exactly.
Come on. Me and my wife's go-to.
It's a checklist. Just check it off if you are.
The mantras that you hear, like the one day at a time, easy does it. They're simple because they work. You know what I mean? And I think it's like, I used to always kind of mock those. Like, oh, those are so cheesy or lame. And it's like, I actually really live by those now because I've accepted and looked at the true meaning behind it. And it's like, God, when you can just really, live by those, it's like, life becomes easier.
Yeah, it becomes so much easier. Thank you so much for coming on. I know you're a very busy man. I am completely grateful that you are a fellow and someone to reach out to and experience strength and hope. And I am so honored you came on Secret Life. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all the work you're doing. And let's touch base again here soon.
And if you want to be on the show, please email me at secretlifepodcast@icloud.com. Until next time. Thanks again for listening to the show. Please subscribe, rate, share, or send me a note at secretlifepodcast.com. And if you like to check out my book, head over to secretlifenovel.com or Amazon to pick up a copy for yourself or someone you love. Thanks again. See you soon.